Okay. Oh, and Tony, right at the end, when I'm saying goodbye, I'll do like kind of a 10 seconds of just silence looking into the camera and just hang with me for that. That's so Chris can stop the stream. Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to CIO Leadership Live. I'm Mary Fran Johnson. I'm the CEO of Mary Fran Johnson Media and a contributing columnist on CIO.com. Twice a month, we're producing this video show and podcast, streaming live to you on LinkedIn and IDG's Tech Talk channel on YouTube. Today's episode is sponsored by Tableau, the global leader in analytics. Tableau offers an enterprise-ready platform to empower everyone across the organization with trusted and governed data, on-premise or in the cloud. Tableau also integrates with existing technology investments and scales with you as your data environment evolves and matures. You can discover more at tableau.com/CIO. We welcome all of our viewers today to join in this conversation with questions of your own. We'll be watching for those and doing our best to pass them along to today's guest, who I'm very pleased to say and to introduce is Tony Caesar. He is the head of IT for Ericsson's Market Area North America. He's based in Plano, Texas, and Tony's in charge of Ericsson's enterprise IT environment across all of the US and Canada, taking care of all the existing infrastructure and rolling out new technologies to more than 10,000 employees. Ericsson, as many of you no doubt know, is a $28 billion global provider of 5G infrastructure products and services across more than 40 countries, and the US is its largest market. Tony joined Ericsson in 2018, bringing with him 3 decades of technology leadership experience in national and global IT organizations across many different industries, including information and communications technology, banking, consumer products, manufacturing, and distribution. Tony, thanks so much for joining me today. It's great to have you here.
MF, thank you so much for having me today. It's a pleasure, and to hear you recount my experience, I didn't realize I was that old. Right, 30 years or plus of experience. Maybe we're setting the bar of expectations really high with the audience here today, but
Yeah,
I
well,
promise to give them the best I can because I am 30 years plus in this role across my career. And I've had the pleasure of serving under a lot of different leaders and a lot of different organizations. So hopefully we can talk about some of those things today.
I am sure we are going to talk about those, and I feel like you must be fishing for compliments because this is the moment where I say, no, you can't have had 3 decades of experience. Well, I told you my secret is to just say 25 plus years.
I'm going to
Well,
steal that going forward. So,
yeah. Well, let's start out and talk about it's so much of our lives these days because we're all living through the realities of the ongoing disruption and all the problems and the challenges that the pandemic has brought into our lives over the last 18 months. And that has certainly accelerated a topic that I know Ericsson has a lot to say about, and you have talked about a lot in the past, about moving us into the virtual workplace of the future. How, in many ways, it reminds me of that science fiction writer who said that the future is already here, it's just unevenly distributed. So, give us your kind of point of view on that virtual workplace of the future and how much of it has really arrived, both for Ericsson and for the stakeholders that you work with.
yeah, well, listen, the pandemic, talk about a disruptor, has disrupted globally all of our operations, where traditionally we were all used to sitting within our 4 walls of our offices or our buildings and providing compute services to our users with everything from the traditional infrastructure services, client services, as well as all the big end ERP and all the other things that we know are very common in our organizations today. The pandemic hits, and now we're all forced to send our workers to work from home.
Mhm.
A lot of companies were not prepared for that, right? Because many folks, even the basic computer, were still workstations sitting on people's desks or under people's desks. So you have to kind of figure out how do you kind of cross that bridge and get people now the capability to be able to operate at home.
Yeah.
So I think we, Ericsson, were way ahead of the curve on that. And I don't know if we look at our global CIO maybe 5 or 6 years ago who made the decision to say, we're not going to be a desktop company anymore. Everyone was going to have a laptop, regardless of your job. Maybe he had a crystal ball and he knew that something bad would happen one day and we would all have to basically pivot overnight and start working from home. So I think from a equipment perspective, we were prepared because our team members immediately were able to go working from to home. Also, a lot of us had embedded applications, VPN applications that automatically connected our laptops, our computers to the back end working station. So that problem was a non-issue for us. Where we encountered issues, and I'm sure many of our viewers may have also encountered issues, is that team members' home internets were not work ready, right? They were maybe okay to go home after a couple hours worth of work, but when
Mhm.
you're on all day, every day, and you've shifted that workforce, that workload to home, we found that a lot of our users across the globe did not have the home infrastructure
Mhm.
prepared to support them working from home. So that was a whole new issue from an IT perspective because the expectation is from the business, hey, it's connectivity. It's a problem. IT, you guys have to solve this, right? You have to solve the home connectivity issue for our end users. Which, if you think about, we're in 80 countries, or actually 140 countries. That's
Mhm.
almost an impossible task to ask, right? Because every country doesn't have the same setup. So as we started bridging those gaps and addressing people's connectivity issues, the next problem we were faced with was, okay, so now you're working from home and we found that there are a lot of people that were working on their kitchen tables, working on their dining room tables,
Mhm.
working in their bedrooms, right? And again, was it conducive? Also, now we talk about how do you bridge to keep people engaged while we have these tools. We were using Zoom today.
Mhm.
We're a Microsoft shop, so we were
Mhm.
using Microsoft Teams. And now, how do you get people the appropriate equipment to do video, to good audio? Just as an example, we before this call, we were testing our audio to make sure that when we have this call with you
Yeah.
today, that the audio comes across right. So you imagine a conference call with 15, 20 people, and someone's using their computer microphone and their computer speaker, and you're
Mhm.
getting feedback or you're getting
Yeah.
kind of echoes. So we had all these issues to try to kind of resolve, and how we addressed 100,000 employees across the globe. It was almost impressive, I would say. I
Mhm.
wish I could take credit for all of the work because
Mhm.
I just oversee North America, but our global teams really put a lot of effort into ensuring that we not only got the right devices into the hands of our users, we made it easy for people who were working from home to get the appropriate devices. We even extended things of giving people office furniture or allowing them to purchase desks at home. And again, as an IT person, you're desk. That what does that have to do with IT? It had to do with our stakeholders, our users, to create a comfortable environment for them at home so they can continue to be productive. And I think if we look back at 2020, we had
Mhm.
one of our most stellar years as a company.
Yeah.
We exceeded all of our goals as an organization, as well as an IT organization. So we've managed to, let's say, sidestep the pandemic and continue to be prosperous through that time.
Mhm. Well, and you made the point when we were talking earlier that Ericsson is unlike any company you have worked for before, not just in the scale and the size of it around the world, but the fact that it's a company full of engineers, a lot of networking engineers. But I imagine some of our listeners are probably thinking, wow, if Ericsson had the same kind of scramble to make this work that everybody did, it's almost a little unexpected. Now, when we talked earlier, also we talked about how disruption, often we do start talking about how did we all manage to work, but you also switch very quickly to talking about the people focus and the impact on how everybody was doing. And I've had so many more of those conversations with CIOs where we're talking about the new E word, the empathy word, where we find out so much about what everybody's doing. Talk about some of the ways that as a leader, you had to change your style as you were dealing with your very far fly. I know that IT has about 2,000 people globally for Ericsson, but those are not all North America. So,
No, no,
yeah,
no.
give
No,
us.
my team in North America is it's just a percentage of that entire 2,000 over the globe. But we all face the same problems. And those of us, especially me, who are maybe a little bit more old school, that I think really thrive on that face to face, right? We're used to being in the same space, being in the office, being able to get
Mhm.
facial expressions and look across the table and see how people are feeling. And, you'll be able to exude some empathy when someone's sitting in front of you and you know that they're sad or something's going on with them. Now,
Yeah.
how do you take that and carry that forward in the digital world? It was
Hmm.
very difficult, right? One, the biggest issue I think we faced was the fact that people were not comfortable with turning on their videos. And there was a myriad of reasons, right? One, let's say before the advent of backgrounds, because you remember when we just went into the pandemic, uh,
Yeah.
all of the various platforms didn't have blurring or video backgrounds, right? So
Right.
wherever, whatever room you were in, that was on display.
Yeah.
And people were very uncomfortable with that. There were other people who were just not comfortable with the camera, and seeing themselves in the
Right.
camera. So, you have to bridge that. You have to first create a layer of comfort so people understood that, hey, I'm turning on my video and I want you to turn on your video. So how did I break that?
Hmm.
I used to get on all calls very casually. I would get on calls with t-shirts, right?
Hmm. I was going
And
to
with
ask you that.
logos and
Yeah.
stuff, things to show them that, look, even your leader is comfortable, that comes on these calls in his t-shirt, and I'm not made up and I'm ready to have a call with you. So I don't care what you look like. I don't care if your
Mhm.
hair is made up. And there were even times where, because I have a couple, I have an office where my wife also works from home, so I couldn't move into her office. So
Yeah.
I take up one of our other rooms, and I've unblurred my video so people knew that, look, it's
Oh,
okay, it's
yeah.
okay. And I think over the first 6 or 8 weeks, we gradually started getting people more and more comfortable with engaging via video. And I will tell you what, Mary Fran, it was amazing how the team really started to gel. And here was one thing that we did not expect that was a big benefit. We had a lot of workers that worked remotely anyway, right? But before the pandemic, they were in different states, different locations, and they've always said that they felt like they weren't part of the team. Now, when all of us want video, you can't imagine the amount of people that have reached out and said, I love this. We're all the same. I feel we're all equal and everyone,
Level playing field. The level playing field impact. Yeah.
I don't feel like a different anymore. So, it's actually played to some good. We've even seen some introverts that in the office were very, very closed and didn't, share ideas. And now in this world of post, pandemic and using these things, they've turned into excellent people. Like you didn't
Hmm.
even know they had it in them. They have all these ideas and they feel comfortable now because the playing field is level and they're sharing it. So, there's been some good. There's been
Yeah.
some good.
Well, and I know as I mentioned, I was just yesterday, we had you on another IDG event, the CIO Future of Work Summit, and you were being interviewed by my good friend Julia King. And I know you were talking about that concern that people had that you've hired hundreds of people through the pandemic, and then there is that concern. I've never met this guy face to face. How is he going to know that I'm worth how am I going to get promoted in the IT organization? Tell me how Ericsson's culture has encouraged that to be something people can kind of openly talk about. How do you deal with that as the CIO?
Well, I can tell you one of the greatest things about Ericsson is it's focused on its employees. It is so employee culture focused in terms of making sure that employees are comfortable, they feel that they're in an environment to thrive and grow, and they give us a lot of and leaders. They give us enough latitude to kind of create our own spaces within our organizations. We have what we call Ericsson on the Move, and out of the Ericsson on the Move, there are some 5 focus areas. One is executing speedily. It's a speak up environment. That's really one of our big things.
Mm-hmm.
Exhibiting humanness and empathy, collaboration and cooperation, and courageous fact-based decision making. Those 5 core elements that are drilled into us, and we now really believe in it, and we turn that around to our employees. So imagine you're a new hire. You're being hired virtually. You've never met your manager in person. You were interviewed on camera. You were hired on camera from camera, and your first day of work is at a laptop in your house on camera. right? So you have no connectivity to anyone in your organization. So how do I know if I'm growing? How do I know if I'm doing well? Right? What we've managed to do is we've now put more emphasis on what we call one-on-ones
Mm-hmm.
uh, today than we ever had when we were in the office. We spend more time, at least as leaders, with one-on-ones with our direct reports on a more frequent basis as a way to keep touch points. We've
Yeah.
even started programs like we call them virtual coffees, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where we randomly have virtual coffees and hey, show up if you can, right? Lots of virtual coffees, people show up, and we use that time to talk to each other, to collaborate on what's going on. And then also from a growth perspective, I think it's very clear that in this new way of working, and in Ericsson, we have this term way of working,
Way of
which
working.
really talks
Mm-hmm.
about how we operate as an organization. Our way of working is look, we don't manage people by time anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about, hey, you're supposed to work 8 to 5 or 9 to 5, whatever it is. We know that you're home and there are other things that are going on, and we really try to emphasize work-life balance. So we look at results, right? What are you producing? What are the things that you are supposed to do, and are you hitting your results? Are you hitting your mark? So it's no longer about clocking hours because no one clocks in and clocks out anyway. But it's not about clocking hours. It's
Mm-hmm.
about clocking results. So even as a new hire, you very quickly learn that, hey, my value is what I deliver, right? So it doesn't matter that I'm not in the office. I'm being measured on my deliverables. And as long as I continue to deliver, I'm in good standing with everyone. So that's some of the things that we've done that's worked for us.
Well, and I know that a new, and this is kind of a problem with air quotes around it for many CIOs, is feeling like they have to pay special attention to people that are getting all out of balance on work life balance. You know, it used to be if you were the first one in the office and the last one to leave, you were the hardest worker. Now as managers and leaders, you get a little bit concerned when you find out somebody's online 20 hours a day. It's like, how have you handled that? Do you do that? Do you get them on the phone and say you need a few days off? We'll see you on Wednesday. Did you ever think you'd be doing that with your IT team?
Yeah, there's a point where I think we all, and I'm guilty of it too, right? Because now, once upon a time, you rolled out of bed, you had to get yourself ready, you had to get yourself dressed,
Hmm.
right? You had to get in a car or whatever your means of transportation to go to the office. Some of us had shorter times, transit times, and some had longer commute times.
Yeah.
But you were always conscious of, hey, if I don't leave the office by this time, I'm going to be stuck in traffic for another 3 hours or 2 hours. So there were motivating factors to get you out of the office at a decent time, as well as there were extenuating circumstances that meant that you weren't going to jump on a call as soon as you rolled out of bed in the morning at 6 a.m.
Right.
Now, those barriers are gone. Those guardrails are not there. And I have people, especially because we work for a global company, we have
Yeah.
people that send us meeting requests for 3 a.m. in the morning, 4 a.m. in the morning, and they expect you to be on these calls, right?
Ooh.
So we have calls 3, 4 a.m. in the morning, and because we have followed the clock, we can be on the phone at 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon. So some people could be logging 15, 16-hour days very
Yeah.
easily. And I can tell you, in the very beginning, I fell prey to that, right? Because you felt that you were obligated to be on every
Yeah.
call, every meeting. I made it clear, probably I would say 2 months into my team, no more, right?
No more 3 a.m. calls. Good for you.
They could send as many 6 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. calls. They could have them recorded because we can record it and you'll look at it later on, right?
Good.
And I expect that a certain hour, you make the decision how your work-life balance needs to be. Hey, if you have a kid or you want to do homework, because you remember last year, a lot of kids were parents had to work or take their kids. They had
Yep.
younger kids that they had to do education. Hey,
Yep.
you need to take 3 hours during the middle of the day to educate and do homework with your kid.
Hmm.
Do it, right?
Yep. Well, we've got, and we've been talking about all of this communication that of course is going on now, and we have a question from our avid viewers there on LinkedIn. How has the current environment affected your corporate internet services usage? Has it increased that throughput or decreased it due to all the remote workers? I know you mentioned the VPN and a lot of upgrades you had to do. So what can you tell us about that, how that was impacted?
That's a great question. As a matter of fact, I'll give you some insight. It did not affect our corporate internet usage. And you
Wow.
might ask why. Because we had made the move quite a few years ago to start moving a lot of our infrastructure to the cloud.
Okay.
So in reality, the only internet usage is your internet that you're connecting to the cloud, and you're getting access to all of our cloud services. It's not proprietary. Office 365, which many of you probably Office 365
Mhm.
subscribers, we get most of our email and our Teams and all those other things. That's the core of a lot of traffic, right? And that's not going back into the corporate back end system. So in terms of our intranet usage, I would say not much more than normal. If you need services that are on our backend network, obviously you do have to come in over the public internet to get access to our backend network. But
Mhm.
we didn't see quite a huge impact on our backend services. Now, what might be interesting going forward is out of this whole pandemic, and as we continue to move more of our workloads to the internet, and more people are going to work from home, because we really acknowledge that post the pandemic, we will not go back to work the same way we were pre-pandemic, meaning
Mhm.
that today, pre-pandemic, 80-90% of our people were in the office 5 days a week.
Right.
We recognize that post-pandemic, that number is going to drop significantly.
Mhm.
And we're anticipating maybe on average, there may be 40% of the people that might be 30% every day, but there's going to be some mix where more people are going to be doing 2 or 3 days at home and 2 and 3 days in the office. So there's going to be a shift there, right? And
Yeah.
we're not going to be in a position where we need, let's say, all these corporate circuits anymore, because why? People are going to be spending more time working from home, right?
Right.
So our focus is going to have to be, what is your home experience like? What is
Yeah.
your home connectivity experience like? Because that's where you're going to be doing most of your data consumption. So it's actually a shift right now. And I think the pandemic has exposed that
Yes.
really.
Well, and we were talking earlier, there was a story in the Wall Street Journal yesterday about the incredibly accelerated attention of the to the role of the CIO that had, and of course, we were both kind of joking that this has been going on for 10 years, and there are a lot of CIOs that are leading the way with that, including yourself. And when I think about all of the focus that there has been on the providing of technology and the digital transformation, it was often focused externally. And what I see a lot more of now, and maybe I'm just noticing it more, is that companies are paying a whole lot more attention to the employee experience, to upgrading, to making sure that employees have the same kind of great tools that maybe your company is providing through its digital and website offerings and so forth. And that idea that we're not going to go back to the way we were, that keeps turning up in a lot of the surveys out there. I wonder how much of that is a moment in time. You can't imagine looking 5 years ahead and people back 5 days a week in the office. Is that truly a permanent change? When was the last time in a workplace we had a change that big? And I'm thinking it might be the advent of email and how we all started communicating by email. Do you think, is this that kind of a titanic shift?
I would say yes, because who in their lifetime would think that we would have an event such as this pandemic that would disrupt the globe, the
Yeah.
entire globe, right?
Yeah.
I never in my life imagined that, and I can tell you when this whole thing started, I have the date, March the 12th. March
Yeah.
12th was the day that we told our employees, you're going to work from home. And I just kept thinking, oh, this is 2 weeks, max. 2 weeks, we're all going to be back in the
Maybe
office.
a month. Yeah, I know.
And then 2 weeks to 4 weeks to 6 weeks to 6 months to 8 months to a year.
Yeah.
Who would have thought that, right? So I really believe that we as organizations, especially if you focus just on IT, we as IT, just both from the vendors, the product providers, as well as us, we've accelerated so much in the last year. Product makers have accelerated their platforms so much in the last year. We as IT leaders have brought so much more digitization and automation to our internal operations in the last year, not because we wanted to, but because we had to, right?
Yes.
We were forced to be super agile, right? And start to really look at, all right, the days of this long 8, 9 year, months to roll out something, we were doing it in weeks now because we had to, right? So
Mhm.
when you look at all that swift change and you see where people are now comfortable, that's the key.
Yeah.
And they're comfortable working from home. and they're productive. It
Hmm.
makes it very difficult to think that we're going to find a way to flip that switch back to post-pandemic ways of working because people won't. I don't think people are going to allow it. I extend that one more thing, and you didn't ask, but think about this. We're even now considering hiring people that are out of state without making them reload. Where in
Oh,
the past we said, hey, you know what? You got to reload. You got to.
yep.
Now when you start looking at people, you don't have this. You don't have a reload budget. You don't even have to think about that because hey, that person works as long as they're in the time zone more or less. You hire them because you've already proven in the last year and a half that they can be productive. They
Yeah.
can lead leaders that lead teams of people that have been new hires and never met their teams, and they're leading their teams today in this virtual world. So I
Yeah.
believe those tectonic changes in our lifetime, excuse me, that will never go back. I really
Mhm.
think so.
Of course, and we're of course this is our show where this gets recorded. This will live on the internet and on CIO.com hopefully forever. So we may have to dial back in 5 years and say, okay, he said right now, stake in the ground. I was talking to another CIO the other day. It was he was saying how they're doing a lot of digital transformation. He said, "I have guaranteed my CEO that we are never going to have a cyber event that puts us on the front page of the Wall Street Journal." And I immediately felt a clutch of anxiety that when you say never in that kind of approach. One of the things that you were talking about on that the Future of Work Summit, where you were talking with my friend Julia, that commute time that everybody has saved. Tell me from a leadership standpoint, what have you tried to do with that to change the way you work, say with your business colleagues? Because you're very well known as someone who's a very business strategy thinking, and I think you were making the point that a lot of CIOs really dove in and came to the rescue, but it was a lot of technical things that they got to do. Now that all the tactical and the technical is kind of set up and working well, the strategic aspects of what happens with your business, how do you make sure that you keep as firm a grip on that? How are you working differently with your business colleagues?
Well, I can tell you, time commute aside,
Hmm.
I think before the pandemic, I've always been the kind of leader that was focused on the strategic side of our operations,
Yep. Hmm.
right? I've always worked with the business to try to find out, what are the things we can do to improve your operations, improve your delivery to your customers, right? So everything from what are we doing to help grow the business, or what are we doing to take costs out of the business, right?
Hmm.
So we had tons of projects on the way around either whether it's cloud migration initiatives in place, or we had several other things where we're kind of reducing footprints in data centers and some other things like that would enhance our customers' environments. Also, as we were bringing automation to the table, we have from a group level an IT modernization program in place where we're
Hmm.
looking to modernize IT. But me personally, the pandemic hasn't changed how I interact with my business stakeholders. Yes, there were tactical things that we had to do real time to address the needs just to get people to be able to function adequately from home. But
Yeah.
we were still engaged with our key stakeholders, right? I have a group that their total focus is it's business engagement, right? And we are focused on making sure that we connect with all the key leaders within the organization. We have regular routine meetings with them. We have
Hmm.
regular which many of you out there probably have with your leadership team, where you have QBRs with your leadership team, and you're always making sure that our activities are aligned with the goals of the business, right? So the days and as I mentioned to you, I think last week, the days
Hmm.
of the full CIO with just worrying about infrastructure and servers and routers and switches, that's so long ago, right? Because
Yeah.
those are probably not even working today, right? That
Yeah.
you have to be considered part of the business, right? And helping them change and transform. So we have a lot of transformation activities underway. I have to be careful. My media people always say don't divulge too much. So I want to be respectful.
Well, I got a whole bunch of questions I do want to ask about that. But before we leave the topic of employees, we had a question from our audience about how have you offered support to remote workers in terms of their increased costs of working from home, such as upgrading their home internet to cope with the work from home workloads, or increasing their utility usage and that sort of thing. So if you can share a few details about, we've talked about what a great company culture Ericsson has. Do you do that sort of stuff?
Changing enough, specifically with the internet thing, we
Mhm.
looked at it. I imagine if we were just looking at North America, that's roughly 10,000, 9,000 employees. When you look at it globally, you've got 100 plus thousand employees. And we actually ran the cost model, right,
Oh.
of what the average cost was. So we actually did an exercise to
Mhm.
see what it would be. And you could imagine the cost was exorbitant. I mean, just unimaginable. So what we focused on were the things that were probably more low hanging fruit that we had control over, easy to can do, like desks, right? We made it easy for you to go to IKEA and order desks, right? So you
Yeah.
can desk, and we made it easy for you to have equipment at home, so you can go and order a monitor. You can go in the office and you can borrow your monitor. We made it easy for you to be able to get peripherals like keyboards and mice and cameras, right? Such that where it would be hard in the past, you would basically put an order process in our system where you go and you order and you get it delivered to your home, right? So we did a lot of different things to make the employees' home experience better. Again, but it really was, I think the internet was the only thing that we really didn't go in that way or
Okay.
pay their utility bills, because the other side of the equation was, hey, you're not commuting anymore, right? You're not taking your clothes to the laundry every week like some of us may have been doing, right?
Okay. So you did that exercise, and it's not surprising that it was exorbitantly expensive, I guess, right? Well, and I think our viewers are not ready to let go of this topic yet. I have another question asking about your thoughts in terms of long-term impact of remote workers not having a face-to-face rapport building advantage and formal team building. And I know we've mentioned a number of things that you do, but have you done any studies on that or anything like, because we've been doing this now for a year and a half. So what do you think is working really well?
Well, right now, again, it's working well because we're all on the same playing field. But
Ah.
I have anecdotal like data that says when we do go back in the office, that
Mhm.
one thing that might happen is people that routinely come back in the office may start to get favor.
That's right.
Why?
Maybe.
Because they're there, right? And it's easy when I can turn to my left and turn to my right and you're right there
Yeah.
versus I've got to go spin up a video call to call you, right?
Mhm.
But I think we don't know yet, Mary Fran. We don't know. We won't know until the switch is flipped
Ah.
and we all do decide to start going back into the offices. But I think there is an upside, and to the audience, the upside is that you're not alone, right? Your company is not the only company that's going to be experiencing this. We're
Right.
all going to be in the same boat at the same time, right?
Yeah.
The same way when the pandemic hit, we all had to pivot overnight and figure out how to be successful. And we
Mhm.
all kind of, I said, steal with pride from each other when we found that someone's doing one thing good and someone's, I want to apply that to my organization. I think we'll have those same opportunities because we just don't know. And I wish I could tell you that we have studies. What we have done is we looked at how we're going to revamp the office space,
Yeah.
right, to make it more conducive to what we call, we created personas, right? And the
Mhm.
personas were people that are going to not be in the office all day, that are going to come in for meetings, or you need more meeting space or
Mhm.
collaboration spaces, right? So I think gone are the days of dedicated offices. That much I can tell you because we really shied away from offices in Ericsson today anyway.
Mhm.
It was more open seating, open spaces, regardless of your title, right? There
Yeah.
was this is the idea of leaders should be in the middle with their people, right? We should all be in the same space.
Mhm.
But we're now looking at how do you take some of that space and customize it to now accommodate the virtual workforce that may drop in and drop out. So those are some of the things that we were planning for. But to that person's question, I
Mhm.
don't really have the answer to that one. I think we'll have to
Well,
see.
and I actually think that was a very great answer because you're just honest. You're like, well, I will see. I actually don't know. Well, let me Let me pivot now to talking a little bit more about some of those big business and tech initiatives that you have coming for the next year or two. I know that you've got several major software initiatives underway. You're doing a lot of ERP modernization. Ericsson does acquisitions and so forth. So tell me about what, and I think you mentioned to me that you want to be 80% in the cloud within the next 2 years, did you say? All right.
25, by
So
2025.
by 2025, tell us about some of the big business and tech initiatives. And I always hate to, I don't even like to call them tech initiatives anymore because they're always business initiatives that are enabled and fueled by tech. So what is uppermost in your mind when you're thinking about running that enormous organization across the US and Canada?
I'd have to answer on behalf of our CEO, excuse me, our CIO, Matt Team, who's headquartered out of Sweden.
Mhm.
And he has a vision of modernizing our entire IT organization. It's called an IT modernization program, where we're looking at all of the traditional IT services and solutions that we offer, and we're trying to bring them into the modern agency, or the 20th century, so to speak. So one of the things you and I spoke about is our cloud migration modernization program, where we're looking at what you guys would think of as traditional legacy applications that run either in data centers or run in your respective IT shops, and moving those things into the cloud, right? And looking at more what we call consumable based applications, where the gone are the days of the big giant ERPs, right? And again, it's known that we are an SAP shop that runs our back end systems, but SAP is one of a myriad of systems that we use, right? And like in my old life, I remembered, I led IT organizations that were an SAP shop, and that's all we spoke about was our SAP environment, right? Whether it was good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah.
In Ericsson, it's just one of many things that we speak about. It's not the prevailing topic that gets all of our attention, so to speak.
Right. Right.
But if you look at some of the other things that we're doing around modernizing IT, is also things down to say even the clients, right? Where we're
Mhm.
looking now at, can you imagine we have to provision clients for 1,000 people? 100,000 people. So how do you do that, and how do you get those clients provisioned out to those users and do it in such a way that it's very simple and cost effective, right? So
Yeah.
we have our next wave of, we call our next gen client, that we're going to be probably rolling out in the next year,
Mhm.
and it's all going to be provisioned off of the internet, right? So in
Okay.
theory,
Of course.
I'll send you a notebook to your house, and you basically connect it to your home internet, and in a matter of an hour, it's fully
Wow.
with
Hmm.
all the applications that you need and that you use, right? And it makes it much more easy and a better user experience versus now if I on
Hmm.
notebook. So we've got those things going. I think those are some of the things I can talk about openly. The other things
Okay.
I have to keep for now.
Oh, good. Well, and it's ironic we're talking about technology, and we had a couple of freezes just now, I think, on your end. So I want you to repeat what you just said about the projects coming up, because I think we might have lost some of it when we had a bit of a freeze. Technology is
So
so much our environment, and yet it determines everything, doesn't it?
hopefully I'm not frozen now.
No, you're not frozen now.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I was
Hmm.
talked about our IT modernization program
Right.
and our goal of moving 80 to 85% of our compute services to the cloud as some of our big initiatives. I can't go deep into what our plans are for SAP. We
Hmm.
are we're we're thinking about some things, right? So they're
Yep.
considering what they want to do with that overall platform. We have a lot of projects around what we call lighthouses that are focused on enhancing our customers' experience, right? So
Okay.
there's a lot of digitization activities on the way, where our supply chain, as an example, right? We're adding a lot more automation and digitization to our supply chain
Hmm.
internally. In terms of IT services, we've put now a lot of bots in place of humans, right? Where we're trying to facilitate getting people answers much quicker than
Yes.
having to go through the service desk and waiting and waiting. So we have a lot of bots now in place where you can go in chat box, you type in a problem, and it'll either give you an answer or send you to somewhere where you can get an answer. So we're
Mhm.
doing a lot of things. Some are major and some are a little bit smaller.
Mhm.
We have now experimenting in my group. I can tell you this because one thing about Ericsson, all these engineers, it breeds an environment of innovation and ideation, right?
Yes.
So a lot of people that are way smarter than I ever was, they just come up with all these ideas. And even within my team, they say being around these folks makes you better. So my team now are also starting to innovate, and we even have one of our service desk tech, came up with this brilliant idea to create an app that a user can screenshot a problem and submit it through this app and have backend AI and ML figure out how to resolve the problem automatically for the user and send them back an answer.
That is
So that is, believe
really
it or not,
cool.
that came from a service tech. So
Yeah.
that was such a great idea. We jumped on it. We're
Yes.
funding it, right? And we're building it.
I remember a story like that some years ago from a CIO who we were talking about cybersecurity, and it was a team in South America, and they were dealing with that anonymous hacker group, and they were doing some brainstorming, a bunch of people standing around, and they had an intern, a 22-year-old, 21-year-old kid who was part of the discussion, and at one point he piped up and said, "Well, why don't I just join and I'll ask these questions and find out?" And everybody was at first a little horrified. What? You mean go sign up and join? And then they thought, well, yeah, we can infiltrate. It was just, and it came from, a 21-year-old that nobody really expected them to have, a solution ready to go. But one of the kind of business funded services you and I discussed that I think is very much in keeping with what we've been talking about was the US Smart Factory. You've got the first fully automated factory there in Texas where you're building radios and using the robotics and all that. Talk a little bit about that. Is that something that has happened under your watch?
That is probably that's our crown jewel right now.
Oh, all right.
Our smart factory.
Mhm.
We were fortunate back in 2018 when they decided to build this factory, and they selected a site here in Louisville, Texas, which is probably 20 minutes away from our main office to build this factory. So I got the honor of seeing this thing go from dirt to now this amazing facility that has robotics, AI. It's got sensors. The lines are fully automated. It's amazing when you see this thing and to see it being built from the ground, from scratch to where it is today. One thing that, from an IT perspective, the value proposition was we that facility is owned by our supply group, right? Because they're actually manufacturing radios that we ultimately sell and deliver to our customers.
Mhm.
Um, they need an IT operations. They need IT to manage that full facility end to end. And typically in our organization, these businesses, because we are a technology company, businesses have been known to spin up their own IT within our organization. So you have enterprise IT, right, but then you have business focused IT where they've got their IT that just focuses on their areas.
Yeah.
We were able to convince them to, let's say, allow us to manage that IT on their behalf,
Mhm.
and we hired up our own group, someone under my leader, and now we run the IT operations for that smart factory. And as a matter of fact,
Good.
I have not been there in probably a year because when COVID hit, we had to put some really strict rules and regulations about who goes to the factory
Yes,
because
of
again,
course.
they could not shut down. They have to keep working.
That's right.
So mask mandates, and you've got to get pre-approval before you go
Mhm.
down. You have to have a reason to go. So I haven't been there for a year, but I'm going tomorrow for the first time in a year
Oh,
to visit my team. Many of which I've only met virtually. I've not seen them in person because they were all hired during the pandemic. So I'll spend the day down in the factory tomorrow. It's an amazing facility.
yeah.
It's most all of the newest technology you could think of. We've got
Mhm.
sensors in the floor. We've got robots moving around that are moving product from stations to stations. We've got 5G in the factory as well.
Yeah.
It's an amazing facility. Absolutely.
Well, and it's probably going to be all the more dazzling because it will be something that you haven't been able to do for a year.
That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, there is that too. And we mentioned it in passing. What kind of wisdom or ideas or thinking do you have to share about cybersecurity? And it's just, I feel like it's always been in the top three with CIOs. You worry about leadership and innovation and security. And of course, all of that in the context of how your business is doing. Is there anything pre or post pandemic that has essentially risen higher up your list, your own strategic CIO type list about what you pay attention to or what you want to do with it? And I know you won't get specific.
Oh, no.
We don't want to
But I
draw
can,
any targets on you or anything like that, but
no, I can tell you this. It's almost simple. Assume you have the ability to be compromised.
hmm.
Assume that. Just right out of the gate, that there's something in your overall infrastructure, your points of access, where you can be compromised.
Yes.
If you work from that perspective, right, where I've got a hole, I just got to look for it, I got to find it.
Right.
That's the right place to be, as opposed to thinking, I've got everything locked down. There is no way anyone can infiltrate my environment, because I think that's the furthest thing from the truth. If you're running a SaaS platform, is it possible that SaaS platform can be compromised? Do you have IPR on that SaaS platform? Are all of your clients locked down, meaning that can your employees install software on those clients? If they can't, that's another potential area for someone to hack. People are working from home now, right? So
Yes.
they really have their computer on and logged into your network and walk away. And they have kids of all different ages who might use their computers unknowingly, right? And either go on sites or install software, do other things, maybe not maliciously, but could create another way for someone to backdoor into your environment. So
Yeah.
I take the mindset that, hey, I can be compromised. I probably have a hole somewhere, and then start putting your teams to focus on looking for those holes. That's the approach I would take. Uh,
Hmm.
Assuming that, hey, we've got firewalls and we got this and we got that and we've got all these policies, because I found that policies are nothing but paper and ink, right? Right? Because there are times when we have a policy,
Yeah.
people violate policies, again, sometimes unknowingly, a lot. And you
And
got to see that there's an issue there.
And sometimes, and I was thinking, especially with engineers and with computer scientists, they might look at a policy forbidding something as a challenge, and
Worse, actually.
how do we work around worse?
Worse because they're smart, right? And
Yeah,
they don't need the traditional IT folks to help them, right? So, oh,
right.
I know what to do. I can configure my own computer. Or I can do my own stuff. I can install my own software. Right? Wait a minute. I can use the guest Wi-Fi to do this, to do that, to do that. So,
Mhm.
there's all kinds of stuff that engineers do that can
Yes.
create some problems for you.
Well, and I know one of the ways that you have worked to kind of harness all that wonderful engineering energy, as it were, is with essentially your innovation ecosystem. I'm always interested in how CIOs are managing and running that. And you have an innovation platform that you've launched it, and it's not just for IT or just for those engineers, it's for everyone in the company. Tell us a little bit more about that. You have a yearly event where everybody submits and all. And so, what is this innovation platform and what has it done for you lately?
There are actually two separate. We have two now. We have one that we run in MANA, which is Market Area North America, where once a year we have an innovation contest where
Mhm.
groups get together, and they come up with ideas, and then they present them in a forum. It's a pretty big deal for us, right? And your idea, if selected, could not only be brought to fruition, but in some instances, some people have actually had companies spun off from their innovative ideas, and they get to
That's so
participate
neat.
as
Yeah.
leaders in those organizations. So it's really a big thing for us. Every year we do this, but now at an IT level, we have a platform we've just implemented. As a matter of fact, a month ago, excuse me, where we looking to our IT team members to innovate. So those are I don't want to give the vendor props here, but there's a vendor product that we're using And we're using that internally within our own IT group to innovate. And like I gave you that example of that gentleman on my team that came up with that idea to
Yes.
help our users. We have a lot of that happening, right? So a lot of the things that are coming out of our IT group now are either coming through this innovation platform where they go through the cycle, they're vetted, and then
Mhm.
ultimately the goal is to come out of the other end where someone says, this is really worth us spending time and money on, and then they fund it and they go forward and they develop it and deliver it to the organization. So we've got two ways of working right now. Some are the ones that are happening internal here in Mana. It's a combination of some of it's customer facing innovation, some of
Mhm.
it's internal stakeholder innovation, and that's for the entire company, not just for IT. Then we have a separate internal group IT, the 2,000 plus employees that we focused on IT specific innovations using this platform. So, we have a lot of things that are going on. That's one of the things that we don't lack of is innovation. There's tons of new ideas every day.
Yeah.
I can tell you, it makes a guy like me who's been doing this for so long, sometimes you go, man, maybe I wish I was born now, right? Because there's so many things going on now that I would like to be involved in that now, you're on the tail end. So you just kind of sit back and you watch and say, that's a great idea. Let's go ahead and innovate it. I can't wait to see it get delivered kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you never know. You may, instead of that commute time that you used to have to spend, you may wake up one morning and have one of those innovation ideas all on your own. and,
Could be hopeful.
and they'll spin out the Tony Caesar company from that, and then, you'll be a millionaire or a billionaire, right? The and thinking about too about the talent that goes into that and encouraging people, that culture that gets people to step forward with their ideas. Let's also talk about diversity and equity and inclusion. That has been with the topics like empathy and the ESG, the environmental societal governance, the attention that's being paid not just by CIOs and their CEO bosses, but boards of directors as well. And I know that you are involved for some months now in co-chairing a new group within the company. Talk a little bit about that, about what, how Ericsson is approaching the whole DE and I. Everything has so many acronyms these days, but you know what I mean.
Yep. So look, I would tell you that I've worked for a lot of companies in my career,
Hmm.
and DE&I has never been top of mind in those organizations, right? For whatever reason, good, bad, or indifferent.
Yep.
Uh,
Hmm.
Ericsson has a totally different approach. They are super focused on diversity, inclusion, and equity. They supported way before I started,
Hmm.
probably 4 years ago, the advent of what we'll call ERGs, Ericsson Resource Groups, which were different groups that align with different needs. One is
Yes.
African American Alliance. You had the Asian Society, Latinos Plus. You had Women We group. You had LGBT plus Q plus. So you had all these ERGs that Ericsson supported, right?
Yep.
And they actually supported it even financially, where these groups respond and these teams were focused on their constituents, so to speak, to
Yes.
improve the lives of their constituents within the organization.
Hmm.
A year ago, post the George Floyd incident, our CEO here locally in the United States was so impassioned about that, and he felt that he wanted to do more. And he put his money where his mouth is, and he actually funded now a D&I group. So we have now within our organization a
Hmm.
diversity and inclusion group, and
Yep.
their focus is to do just that, right? And continue working on ensuring that there's diversity, equity, and inclusion within Ericsson. And they've got a bunch of programs that they're working now with external
Hmm.
NGOs, with non-governmental organizations, sponsors. We have a lot of different activities ongoing internal where we're looking at our recruiting process, our end-to-end recruitment process. We also do a lot of things with universities. We've got a lot of programs where we're looking at bringing in diverse candidates from universities into internship programs during the summer, and then
Hmm.
trying to convert those interns into actual full-time employees at the end of their when they graduate out of school. So there's several major programs that we have ongoing. But the one thing I would tell you, and I say this because I just said it this week, it's not a sprint. It's a marathon,
Yep.
right? This stuff doesn't change overnight. We
Yep.
won't get dramatic changes in even this organization that's so vested into doing this, in that now global has latched onto this, and
Good.
global now has created a global DNI organization. And now
Good.
all of this happened within a year.
Yeah.
And we're now really focused on not just MANA, North America, we're looking at doing this globally, right? And how do we create a more diverse and inclusive organization across the whole? So I'm encouraged. Actually, I'm really excited. It's one of my passions right now.
Yeah.
As an IT leader, sometimes it's good to be able to come out of that IT space and focus on some cultural things, right? That we
Yeah.
are going to make a difference in. So
Yeah.
I'm all in on that right now.
Well, and it's funny, I don't tend to think of you as an IT leader who's all about technology anyway. So I do think that this seems like it's right up your alley to be deeply involved with that, and that you wouldn't get involved with something that was just, one of those press release kind of organizations. And I just increasingly these days, when I talk with CIOs, if we get into that conversation about it's so hard to find talent, I've been tending to ask lately, well, what kind of high school, college internship programs are you running? What sort of outreach are you doing? Are you connecting with STEM programs and that sort of thing? And I feel like it's much more authentic. I feel like you earn the right to complain about the talent shortage if you're doing all those things and still not being able to find the talent you need. But it doesn't sound like that has been a problem for you at Ericsson. So
Well,
congratulations on that.
there's talent. There's lots of it. The
Hmm.
question is, how do you get that talent to want to work for you versus one of the other, big tech companies? Because there's quite a
Right.
few of them. So there's a lot of competition for the talent, and even keeping the talent that you have,
Yeah.
right? Because again, that's the other side of the equation where you've got to make it so competitive, and culturally competitive that people want to remain where they are and
Yeah.
not just jump ship overnight kind of thing. So
Right.
it's
Well,
an
good.
ongoing thing, and it's all about people, right? Our
Yeah.
jobs as leaders, right? It's about people, and if you forget that, then you've lost the battle already. It's about people.
Yes. Well, and that brings us right back to where we started. When we started talking about disruption and how it matters and how to address it, you have to take it from the people aspect. So, thank you so much for joining me today for this conversation. It has been great. I've really enjoyed talking at length with you this way, and I hope we got to everything on our list. I feel like we did.
I think we did. Thank you for having me, and to the audience out there, I hope that you got value out of your hour, because I
Yeah.
know how hard it is to sometimes find an hour to
Yes.
dedicate to something like this. So I hope you got value from it, and I enjoyed it, Mary Fran. I enjoyed it very much.
Great. Well, so did I, Tony. Thank you so much. And if you joined us late today, don't worry. You can watch the full episode later today right here on LinkedIn, and you can also find it on CIO.com and on our IDG Tech Talk channel on YouTube. CIO Leadership Live is available also as an audio podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And I hope you enjoyed and got as much out of today's conversation with Tony Caesar as I did, and that you'll join us for our next episode of CIO Leadership Live, which is coming up in 2 weeks on Wednesday, October 6th. And I'll be joined again at noon Eastern by Edward Wagoner, who is the Chief Digital Officer at JLL. Thanks again to Tableau for sponsoring this episode, and do take a moment to subscribe to our YouTube channel, IDG Tech Talk, where you can find all of our previous shows. Stay well, and we'll see you again next time.